Most people think motivation is just about willpower, that inner strength that pushes you to get up early, hit the gym, or finish that project. But here's the truth. Willpower is like a battery. It runs out. And when it does, even the most determined person can find themselves stuck on the couch, wondering what happened to all that drive. Psychologists have been studying motivation for decades, trying to answer a simple question: why do some goals stick while others fade away? In the early 2000s, researcher Baumeister published a series of studies on what he called ego depletion. He found that people who used self-control in one task, like resisting cookies, were more likely to give up faster on another task, such as solving puzzles. It seemed like willpower was a limited resource, but later research complicated that idea. Some studies suggested that believing willpower is limited actually makes it feel limited. In other words, your mindset about self-control shapes how much of it you think you have. So if willpower isn't the full story, what is? The key lies in understanding motivation as a system, not a single feeling. It's driven by three main forces: emotion, environment, and meaning. When these work together, motivation becomes sustainable. When they don't, we rely on sheer effort, and that rarely lasts. Let's start with emotion. Every action we take is tied to how we feel. Neuroscientists have found that dopamine, the brain's anticipation chemical, spikes not when we achieve a goal, but when we expect a reward. That means motivation is less about the finish line and more about the journey. If the process feels rewarding, our brain keeps us engaged. If it feels like punishment, we check out. That's why someone can spend hours playing a video game but can't stay focused on a report for 20 minutes. It's not laziness, it's emotional design. The second force is environment. Behavioral psychologist B.J. Fogg put it simply: motivation doesn't create action, design does. He found that small environmental tweaks, like putting your running shoes by the door or turning off notifications, can drastically change your habits. In one Stanford study, people who placed fruit on the counter instead of the fridge ate 30% more of it. No willpower involved. Just visibility. Our surroundings constantly nudge us, often without us noticing. That's why relying purely on self-control is like swimming upstream. You might move forward for a while, but the current always wins. The third force is meaning. When your goal connects to something bigger than yourself, motivation transforms. Think of a nurse working long shifts or a parent staying up all night with a sick child. They're not powered by discipline alone. They're powered by purpose. Research from Yale's Amy Wisniewski showed that people who see their work as a calling rather than just a job report higher satisfaction and persistence, even under stress. Meaning acts as renewable energy for the mind. It recharges instead of drains. Now let's bring this down to real life. Say you want to start exercising regularly. You could try forcing yourself with pure willpower. Set alarms, guilt trip yourself, push through the exhaustion. That might work for a week or two. But eventually, your brain rebels. It starts negotiating: maybe I'll skip today. I'll start again Monday. Sound familiar? Instead, imagine designing your motivation system. You make the process emotionally rewarding. Maybe you pick a form of movement you actually enjoy. You adjust your environment, lay out your workout clothes the night before, keep your gym bag in the car. And you connect it to meaning. Perhaps you want to stay healthy to play with your kids or to feel energized for your creative work. Suddenly, motivation becomes less about willpower and more about alignment. This approach is backed by self-determination theory, one of psychology's most supported models of motivation. It says that humans thrive when three needs are met: autonomy, competence, and relatedness. Autonomy means you feel in control of your choices. Competence means you feel capable of success. And relatedness means you feel connected to others while doing it. When these needs are satisfied, motivation is intrinsic. It comes from within. When they're ignored, motivation becomes extrinsic, pushed by pressure, fear, or rewards. And extrinsic motivation fades the moment the reward disappears. A classic example comes from education research. In one study, children who loved drawing were divided into groups. Some were rewarded with gold stars for their art, others weren't. After the rewards stopped, the rewarded kids drew less often than before. The external prize had crowded out their internal joy. Adults aren't much different. When we chase goals purely for external approval, money, validation, status, we burn out faster. When we chase them for growth and meaning, we stay engaged longer. Another layer to motivation is identity. Behavioral scientist James Clear, known for his work on habits, often says that true change happens when actions become part of who you are. You're not trying to run, you're becoming a runner. You're not forcing yourself to write, you're becoming a writer. A study published in the Journal of Consumer Research found that people who framed their goals around identity, like saying, "I'm the kind of person who eats healthy," were more persistent than those who simply used outcome-based goals like, "I want to lose weight." Identity anchors behavior. It gives every small action a bigger story. Let's talk about the brain for a moment. The prefrontal cortex is the part that plans, resists temptation, and sets goals. It's powerful, but it tires easily. That's why decision fatigue is real. In one experiment, judges were more likely to grant parole earlier in the day than later. After many decisions, their mental energy waned. The same happens to us in daily life. Every time we rely on willpower, choosing salad over fries, focusing on work instead of scrolling, we're spending mental currency. The trick is to reduce unnecessary decisions. Automate what you can. Structure routines so you don't have to negotiate with yourself every time. That's not weakness, it's smart psychology. There's also the emotional side of failure. When people think they've lost motivation, they often mean they've hit resistance. Resistance isn't a lack of willpower, it's a signal. It's your brain saying, something here doesn't feel safe or rewarding. Instead of pushing harder, ask what's missing. Is the goal too vague? Too big? Too disconnected from what matters? Making goals smaller and more specific can reignite momentum. A 2017 study from the University of Pennsylvania showed that people who broke goals into fresh starts, like new weeks or birthdays, were 75% more likely to take action. The brain loves clear beginnings. Another powerful motivator is progress tracking. Our minds crave evidence of improvement. Even small wins release dopamine, reinforcing the habit loop. That's why fitness trackers, language learning streaks, or progress bars work so well. They visualize success. But here's the catch. Only if the progress feels meaningful. If you're chasing numbers that don't connect to your deeper values, the dopamine fades quickly. Let's go back to emotion for a moment, because it's often misunderstood. Many people wait to feel motivated before acting. But motivation often follows action, not the other way around. When you start doing the thing, your brain catches up. Psychologist Timothy Peichel calls this the action-first principle. It's why writing the first sentence breaks writer's block, or tying your shoes makes you more likely to run. Action creates momentum. Waiting for motivation is like waiting for the wind before you start walking. Now, imagine you're working on a long-term goal, say learning a language. At first, it's exciting. New sounds, new words, quick progress. Then it gets harder. You plateau. This is where most people quit. But if you've built your motivation system right, you'll push through. You'll remember why you started. Maybe it's to connect with family, travel confidently, or expand your mind. You'll adjust your environment, switch apps, join a group, make it fun again. And you'll give yourself grace for the dips, knowing they're part of the process. Here's something interesting. People who see motivation as dynamic, something that fluctuates, are more resilient than those who see it as fixed. A 2020 study in motivation science found that when participants viewed motivation as changeable, they were better at recovering from setbacks and maintaining effort. So the secret isn't to never lose motivation, it's to understand how to rebuild it. And that brings us full circle. Willpower has its place. It helps us start. But it's not the fuel that keeps us going. Emotion, environment, meaning, and identity do. They form a loop that sustains motivation long after the initial burst fades. Think of willpower as the spark, and these other forces as the firewood. Without both, the flame dies. So the next time you feel unmotivated, don't ask, "What's wrong with me?" Ask, "What's missing from my system?" Do I need more joy, more structure, or more purpose? That shift turns self-criticism into curiosity, and curiosity is one of the most powerful motivators of all. If you found this helpful, remember to subscribe to Tortoise Brain for more insights like this. Slow, steady, and grounded in real psychology. Because motivation isn't about pushing harder, it's about building smarter. And when you understand the psychology behind it, you stop chasing motivation and start creating it. Every small choice becomes a step, every step becomes momentum, and before long, you realize you were never lacking willpower. You just needed a better system.